in the shadow of the Great Steel, where divine authority had been translated into human law, the foundations of legal civilization had been established with a permanence that would influence human society for millennia to come. But in the harsh northern reaches of Mesopotamia, where rocky hills rose toward the mountains of Turkey and winters brought cold that the southern cities had never known, a different vision of empire was taking shape. Here, in the ancient city of Ashur, the god of war and the people who bore his name were forging an approach to power that would reshape the ancient world, not through codes of justice, but through the systematic cultivation of strength itself. The wind swept down from the Zagros Mountains, carrying the chill of distant peaks across the rocky plateau, where Ashur perched like an eagle's nest above the Tigris River. 1500 years before Christ, this was not the gentle landscape of southern Mesopotamia, where rivers meandered through fertile plains and date palms swayed in warm breezes. This was harder country, where survival required different virtues: endurance rather than cooperation, strength rather than accommodation, vigilance rather than trust. The people who had built their city in this unforgiving place reflected the character of their chosen homeland. The Assyrians were traders and craftsmen, hunters and warriors, shaped by centuries of life on the frontier between the civilized south and the wild highlands that stretched toward unknown lands. They had learned from necessity that the world was dangerous, that weakness invited attack, that only strength could guarantee security in a realm where mountain tribes descended without warning and rival cities schemed constantly for advantage. Their patron deity embodied these hard-earned truths. Ashur was not like the gods of the southern cities, not a gentle protector of farmers or a wise guardian of knowledge. He was the god of destiny and war, the divine force that demanded excellence from his chosen people and promised victory to those who proved worthy through struggle and sacrifice. In his temple, prayers were not whispered requests for favor, but bold declarations of intent, vows of service that bound mortal warriors to cosmic purposes larger than individual survival. For centuries, Ashur had remained a regional power, controlling trade routes that connected Mesopotamia to the Anatolian highlands, but lacking the population and agricultural wealth to challenge the great cities of the south. Its merchants traveled as far as the Black Sea, establishing trading posts that brought Assyrian goods and Assyrian methods to peoples who had never seen the sophisticated urban civilization that flourished between the rivers. But trade alone could not satisfy the ambitions that the harsh northern landscape had bred into Assyrian character. The transformation began under Shamshi-Adad I, a king whose name would echo through Assyrian history as the founder of imperial greatness. Unlike the rulers of southern cities who inherited their authority through priestly tradition or commercial success, Shamshi-Adad seized power through military conquest and held it through systematic organization of force that turned warfare from chaotic clash to calculated science. His innovations began with the army itself. While southern cities continued to rely on citizen soldiers who fought part-time between periods of agricultural or commercial work, Shamshi-Adad created Assyria's first truly professional military force, men whose entire lives were dedicated to the mastery of war, who trained constantly for combat, who developed loyalty to their units and commanders that transcended local or family ties. These professional soldiers fought with weapons that represented another Assyrian innovation: iron, the metal that would give its name to an entire age of human history. While bronze remained the standard material for tools and weapons throughout most of the ancient world, Assyrian smiths had mastered the more difficult techniques required to work iron ore into implements that were both harder and more durable than their bronze equivalents. Iron weapons gave Assyrian armies decisive advantages over enemies who continued to fight with traditional bronze equipment. Iron swords could shatter bronze blades, iron spearheads could penetrate bronze armor, iron axes could split bronze shields. But more important than individual weapon superiority was the systematic way Assyrians integrated new technology into comprehensive military doctrine that coordinated different types of forces for maximum tactical effectiveness. Shamshi-Adad's armies included specialized units trained for specific battlefield roles. Heavy infantry formed the core, professional soldiers armed with iron weapons and protected by iron-reinforced armor who could hold defensive positions or break enemy formations through disciplined charges. Light infantry provided mobility and flexibility, skirmishers who could harass enemy forces or exploit tactical opportunities created by heavy unit actions. Most innovative were the siege specialists, engineers who had transformed the ancient art of attacking fortified cities from desperate endeavor to systematic science. Assyrian armies carried portable battering rams, wheeled towers that allowed attackers to reach the tops of enemy walls, and specialized equipment for undermining foundations or setting fires that could destroy gates and defensive structures. But perhaps most important was the development of cavalry units that gave Assyrian commanders unprecedented strategic mobility. While other armies remained dependent on foot soldiers who moved slowly across difficult terrain, Assyrian mounted forces could cover vast distances rapidly, appearing suddenly where enemies least expected them and withdrawing before effective countermeasures could be organized. The psychological impact of these military innovations was as important as their tactical effectiveness. Enemies who had never faced iron weapons or coordinated siege techniques often surrendered without fighting rather than endure the systematic destruction that Assyrian military science could inflict. The reputation for invincibility that Assyrian armies developed became a weapon as powerful as their actual military capabilities. Shamshi-Adad used these military advantages not merely for conquest, but for the creation of an imperial system that could maintain control over vast territories through efficient administration rather than constant warfare. He established networks of fortified cities throughout the regions he controlled, each serving as both military base and administrative center that extended Assyrian authority into areas that would have been impossible to govern through direct occupation. These fortified centers were connected by roads that allowed rapid movement of armies, administrators, and messages across distances that had previously made unified governance impossible. Standardized administrative procedures ensured that policies developed in Ashur could be implemented consistently throughout the empire, while regular reporting systems kept the central government informed about local conditions and potential problems. Most importantly, Shamshi-Adad created institutions that could survive his own death and continue imperial administration under his successors. Professional administrators trained in Assyrian methods served throughout the empire, their loyalty secured through career advancement opportunities that rewarded competence and dedication rather than birth or local connections. Legal codes based on Assyrian precedents provided consistent standards for resolving disputes and maintaining order across territories that encompassed dozens of different peoples and cultures. The engineering achievements that supported this imperial system were as impressive as its military innovations. Assyrian engineers built irrigation networks that brought water to previously barren regions, enabling agricultural expansion that could support larger populations and generate the surpluses needed to maintain professional armies and administrative bureaucracies. Road systems connected every corner of the empire with quality construction that allowed rapid travel even during difficult weather conditions. Bridges spanned rivers that had previously served as natural barriers, while mountain passes were cleared and fortified to ensure safe passage for military and commercial traffic. Communication networks, using mounted messengers, could carry information from the remotest provinces to the imperial capital in days rather than weeks. The capital city of Ashur itself was transformed into a showplace of imperial power that demonstrated Assyrian capabilities to both subjects and foreign visitors. Massive walls surrounded the city, their height and thickness proclaiming the military strength that had created the empire. Within these defenses, palaces and temples displayed architectural innovations that combined practical functionality with artistic beauty designed to inspire awe and respect. The Great Temple of Ashur, rebuilt and expanded during this period of imperial growth, served as both religious center and political symbol. Its ziggurat, while smaller than those of southern Mesopotamian cities, incorporated design elements that reflected Assyrian values, clean lines that emphasized strength rather than ornament, Practical layouts that facilitated efficient ceremony, artistic decorations that celebrated military achievement alongside divine worship. But perhaps most remarkable was the development of Assyrian scholarship and learning during this period of military expansion. Conquest brought Assyrian administrators into contact with the intellectual traditions of every major civilization in the ancient world, creating unprecedented opportunities for cultural synthesis and innovation. The Assyrian scribes collected texts from throughout the empire, creating libraries that preserved literary, scientific, and religious works from dozens of different traditions. Mathematical knowledge from Babylonian schools was combined with astronomical observations from Egyptian temples and metallurgical techniques from Anatolian workshops, producing advances in knowledge that no single culture could have achieved in isolation. Legal traditions from different regions were studied and compared, leading to administrative innovations that balanced imperial uniformity with respect for local customs and practices. Religious concepts from various cultures were incorporated into Assyrian theology, creating a cosmopolitan spiritual tradition that could accommodate the diverse beliefs of imperial subjects while maintaining loyalty to Assyrian political authority. The economic prosperity that resulted from imperial unification transformed daily life throughout the regions under Assyrian control. Trade networks that had been disrupted by constant warfare between independent cities were restored and expanded under imperial protection. Merchants could travel safely from the Black Sea to the Persian Gulf, carrying goods and ideas that enriched communities throughout the empire. Agricultural innovations developed in one region were rapidly transmitted to others, where similar techniques could increase productivity. Craft specialization reached new levels of sophistication as artisans gained access to materials and markets that had previously been beyond their reach. Urban planning incorporated lessons learned from successful cities throughout the empire, creating more efficient and livable communities. The military settlements that secured Assyrian control over conquered territories became centers of cultural exchange, where different peoples learned from one another while maintaining their distinct identities. Intermarriage between Assyrian administrators and local populations created cosmopolitan communities that embodied imperial ideals while preserving regional traditions. But the most lasting impact of early Assyrian imperialism was its demonstration that military excellence could be systematically developed rather than left to chance or individual heroism. The professional military traditions that Shamshi-Adad established would be refined and expanded by his successors, creating armed forces that would dominate the ancient world for centuries and influence military thinking far beyond the boundaries of Mesopotamian civilization. The concept of total war, the systematic application of organized violence to achieve complete political objectives, emerged from Assyrian military doctrine and would shape international relations throughout subsequent history. The integration of military and civilian authority under unified command structures created precedents for later empires that would govern vast territories through similar combinations of force and administration. Most importantly, Assyrian innovations demonstrated that imperial power could be sustained over long periods through institutional development that transcended the capabilities of individual rulers. The empire that Shamshi-Adad created survived his death and continued to grow under successors who built upon his foundations while adapting his methods to changing circumstances. As evening settled over the rocky heights of Ashur, as oil lamps flickered to life in the palace chambers where administrators coordinated the affairs of an empire that stretched from the mountains of Iran to the shores of the Mediterranean, something unprecedented had been achieved in human political organization. Military power had been transformed from chaotic violence to systematic science, creating capabilities that could project authority across vast distances and maintain control over diverse populations. In the great temple where Ashur received the prayers and offerings of his chosen people, priests conducted rituals that acknowledged both divine authority and human responsibility for the empire that had been built through strength and maintained through wisdom. The god of war had proven that disciplined force, properly applied, could create peace and prosperity on a scale that negotiation and accommodation alone could never achieve. Under the eternal stars that had witnessed the rise of cities, the development of law, and the first experiments in imperial governance, the people of Assyria rested peacefully in communities protected by the most formidable military machine the ancient world had ever seen. They knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges to imperial authority, new threats from peoples who had not yet accepted Assyrian supremacy, and the continuous work of maintaining the institutions that made imperial civilization possible. But tonight, in the fortress city that commanded the crossroads between civilization and wilderness, the masters of iron had established precedents for the systematic cultivation of power that would influence human societies until the end of time. The age of professional warfare had begun, and the ancient world would never be the same. Our journey through the corridors of time continues as Assyrian military innovations create an empire more powerful than any the world has seen. Discover how administrative genius transforms conquest into lasting dominion, and how the systematic pursuit of knowledge creates libraries that preserve the wisdom of ages. The apex of Assyrian civilization awaits.